Hey guys, got a very special guest today. It's Justin Williams. He's from The Athletic. It's draft week, Justin. We have got a record number of Bearcats that potentially can be drafted in the NFL draft this week. It is unbelievable. What are you hearing about the Bearcats? Where are they going? Who's falling? Who's rising? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of fitting, right? Like they've gone on this great run on the field the past 4 years under Fickle, and so it's not surprising that a lot of those players who have been a big part of that are now going to get drafted into the NFL, and some with some really high draft picks. So it makes sense, or at least it's nice to see that the product they put on the field, the success they've had on the field, is now going to be represented at the NFL level too. So I think there's a chance they get 9 drafted.
Ooh,
They had
wow.
8 players invited to the combine. I would be shocked. We can run through them all, but I would be shocked if all 8 of those don't get drafted. But then Curtis Brooks, who didn't get a combine invite, but obviously had a really good year, really good past 2 years at Cincinnati. He's kind of been, I think it's pretty thin in terms of interior defensive linemen in this draft. And I think once people started to put on the tape and matched with his pro day numbers that were really good, he did really good on the bench. I think he ran pretty well too at pro day. I think some teams are starting to realize, like, all right, this guy's undersized. Maybe he's a little bit of a tweener, but he's produced, at a high level in college and in some big games against Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia. And so I would not be surprised if he sneaks up into the 7th, maybe even 6th round to make for 9 Bearcats.
That would be huge if we get 9 Bearcats drafted. Now, I keep hearing Sauce, or my God, he might go as high as 2 or 3. I've heard that lately. Where are you hearing Sauce might go?
Yeah. So do you have the draft order in front of you?
I do not. I wish I did.
I'm curious because, well, I think the Giants are 5th, right?
Yeah,
I have to look it
so.
up. But, I think that's a real possibility for him to go 5 to the Giants. But definitely, he seems like it's almost locked up. He's going to go top 10. I think maybe the Vikings are at 12. Like, I would be shocked if he dropped beyond that. But yeah, I think there's a very good chance that the first 5, 6, 7 picks on Thursday night, we're going to hear Sauce's name called. And last I heard, Luke Fickle's supposed to go to the draft, be there in the green room with Ahmad Gardner. So there's a lot that's going to be positive for Cincinnati, but it's been since 1971. I should have kept that in front of me too, since they had a first round draft pick.
Yeah, I think it was. I was just listening to Dave Lapham, his In the Trenches podcast last night at work, and Luke was on there with him. I think it was 71. Was the last time we had a first round draft pick? I mean, that's been a while.
Yeah, I can actually pull it up here.
Yeah, I don't remember who he said it was. But like I said, I was at work, but to have 9 of them is awesome. So who you got it up there? Who
yeah. Well, yeah, Bob Bell went 1971 to the Detroit Lions with the 21st pick. Greg Cook was the only other first-round pick. He went number 5 to the Bengals in 69.
Right.
And I would not be surprised if Sauce is matching that top 5 pick on Thursday, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's not the only first-round pick on Thursday either for the Bearcats.
Okay, so that'll bring me to Desmond Ritter. Now, I've heard this whole quarterback draft class is either they're all going to go in the first round or none of them are going to go in the first round, and Desmond is the one I've heard the most big stretch of where he's going to go. Where do you think he's going to go? Or what do you hear?
It seems it's been trending like he's going to go in the first round. And look, I'm certainly not the first person that's talked about this or written about this, but that whole idea of first round draft picks, teams having a 5th round or a 5th year option on them, I think that's really valuable with a quarterback, and that's really valuable with a quarterback like Desmond Ritter, who's developmental and maybe it's going to take a little bit more time at the NFL, and maybe an NFL team's going to want that extra year contract to say, all right, we want to make sure this is a guy we're going to sign long-term as our quarterback or something like that. And you get that if you draft him in the first round. So maybe that means he's going middle of the first round to the Saints or the Falcons or the Steelers. Or maybe that means somebody. Yeah, I know.
I don't want the Steelers.
Cincinnati
anybody but Pittsburgh. Anybody. I don't care who else. Just not the Squealers, because then I'm going to have to stop rooting for him.
I know it's going to be really. Dan Hoard's been talking about this all year. Like he can't stomach it if he goes to the Steelers, but. So maybe it happens there, or maybe just some other team, trades up to somebody like the Bengals or somebody at the end of the first round and is like, we just want to get in there and get that quarterback. Right. But yeah, it always seems like the quarterbacks, no matter what the analysis is they end up going earlier, than people expect, maybe early on, or there's more quarterbacks taken early than they expect. And I think it's going to be the case this year. Teams are so worried. It's so important to have a quarterback, and they're so worried about missing out. And you should have seen, teams like the Falcons and the Saints and the Steelers. I mean, they had half a dozen people at Cincinnati's pro day, like for Desmond Ritter. One of their front office people is standing next to, Ritter's wife and infant daughter as he's going through his throwing drills at pro day. Like, you don't put that much effort into somebody unless you're serious about it.
Yes.
And they're also nervous that if they pass on him and they miss a future franchise quarterback, okay, what was the point of all that work? So the idea of him dropping beyond the first round at this point, it would surprise me.
Yeah. That's the funny thing with quarterbacks. I know. I think Chris Sims, he said on Lapham's podcast too that he only thinks maybe 2 guys in the quarterbacks will go in the first round, and he doesn't think Desmond's going to. And just like what you said, the quarterback, and we know this as Bengals fans, how important that quarterback position is. Once you get that quarterback, that franchise quarterback, it sets you up for everything else you want to do. So you cannot miss that guy. So that's why they take so many chances on the quarterback. That's why I would be shocked if Desmond doesn't go in the first round, and if there's not at least 4 quarterbacks. That's why I was kind of surprised just about last year when the Falcons passed up on I can't remember which quarterback was available. And one of the quarterbacks was available, and they took Kyle Pitts, which Kyle Pitts is a great player, but they need a quarterback now. So that's where I was surprised on that. So, all right. So Sauce is probably going number 1. Ritter's probably going going in the first round as well. Who else? Is Alec Pierce, Kobe Bryant, which I love Kobe Bryant. I want him to be a Bengal. Any of the other guys got a shot at going to the first round, you think? Or are they all more second, third, fourth rounds?
Yeah, no, I think 2 in the first round probably the most Cincinnati could get. I would not be surprised if, Alec Pierce sneaks up into the second round or goes pretty high in the third round. He has a lot of things going for him, which is like he tested like crazy at the combine and at pro day. I think he had the highest vertical jump. Yeah. He ran a good 40. I think he was like 4.41. All of his measurables are great. And, look, which is the case with all of these guys, fortunately for Cincinnati. They're all really good kids. They all interview really well. Like Desmond Ritter, Brian Cooker, academic All-Americans. Alec Pierce was an engineering major. Like when you sit down in a room with these guys, Sauce, like you might think, oh, Sauce, he's got the grill and the chain.
Right.
If you sit down and talk to Sauce, like super nice, humble guy. And so I think a lot of these Cincinnati players did themselves a service when they got in front of NFL teams because they tested well, they interviewed well, and it's just hard to come away not liking all of these guys. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Pierce sneaks up into the second round. And then after that, it's kind of interesting. Like, a name that I've seen kind of climbing, probably not until the third, maybe fourth round, but Brian Cook, safety.
Ooh,
like he could end up being the 4th Bearcat off the board. And that's interesting. He couldn't do much testing this offseason. He got offseason shoulder injury. Right, he played with like a hurt shoulder all season. He elected to kind of get it done right after the season, get it cleaned out because he wanted to be ready for minicamp at the NFL. So he got invited to the Senior Bowl, but couldn't test, couldn't play. Got invited to the Combine, couldn't test. Same thing at Pro Day. So I think early in the process, he maybe started slipping down boards.
Right.
But then his teams start to interview him, and then they go back and watch the tape. They're like, oh, wow, this guy started for 1 year at Cincinnati, and sometimes he was on the level of Sauce in terms of what he was doing in that, and Kobe in that back end on the secondary. So it's maybe a little bit more of a chance just because you haven't seen him this summer. But I think teams watching tape will be like, man, Brian Cook could be exactly what we need in the NFL at safety. So I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe goes 4th after Pierce. But all that group right after Pierce, I expect he'll be 3rd. Then you're talking Cook, Kobe, Darian Beavers. I think those 3 could kind of go anywhere in like the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Probably throw Jerome Ford in there as well. And
what about Samaje Sanders?
Oh yeah, and Maji, I'm sorry, forgot that he's probably, most of these guys I think have climbed up draft boards. Maji is probably the only one that slipped a little bit, and that's I think just he wasn't feeling well at the Senior Bowl, so his weight came in low, or maybe it was the Combine. His weight came in a little bit low. He built his weight back up to around 250 by Pro Day. And I think because he's kind of like a true edge rusher, he has to fit the system
Right.
that the team's playing in.
Mhm.
So I could maybe see him slide into third, fourth round with that same group. Maybe who goes first between him and Brian Cook, I think would be interesting. But I also think he's kind of one of those guys that wherever he ends up, if he can get in the right system and they can bulk him up, that team's going to feel like they really hit a jackpot getting MyJ as low as he went. Because this is a guy that was being talked about as a potential first, second round draft pick at the start of this season.
Yeah.
And maybe his numbers dipped a little bit this year, but like his skill and production wise has not.
Right, exactly. It's funny you said jackpot. I got Jackpot Joey
There
right behind me. So now one thing I want to go back real quick to Alec Pierce, and you talked about the education or whatever these guys have gotten. Alec Pierce got his engineering degree in 3 years. That's ridiculous. I mean, my son's still in the middle of doing his, and he's been graduated from high school for almost 4 years, and he hasn't got it done yet. So Alec to do that and play football is right there. That's impressive enough to saying, hey, there might be something more to these Bearcats than just football players. So, and that's one thing that I think that Luke Fickell is building here at Cincinnati. Because if you remember back when Ritter was doing the combine and they showed him run the 40, and they on the NFL Network they put the camera on, I guess back at UC, and a couple of his teammates were sitting there watching him and cheering him on. And to me, that's awesome. That means those guys are boys, they're family, and that's something they're building. And then also Luke said that almost all these guys came back for spring practice. I mean, they didn't practice, but they were supporting.
They were hanging around all the time. Sauce and Jerome Ford and Michael Young have been going to Bearcats baseball games like the past couple of weeks. You know, they're still on campus. I'm sure they still have their apartments or whatever. But like, yeah, Sauce is signing autographs for kids at UC baseball games, and he's about to be a top 5 pick. Like, it's crazy.
But that's cool. Is they're still here? Which, I mean, they could, yeah, they got apartments still there or whatever, but they're still showing up. To me, that means they have ownership of the University of Cincinnati, of the football program, trying to get, especially if they're showing back up to practice. You know, I understand going to a baseball game, chill out, watch that, but going to practice, man, you're in there and I'm sure they're telling the young boys, say, hey, we built this thing, you know, you guys got to keep it going there. And that kind of bodes well for the future of the program. So with all these guys leaving, speaking of the program, with all these guys leaving, going to the NFL, what we got behind them coming up this year? How I didn't get a chance to get to the spring game, but how are we looking to replace? Because there's a lot to replace.
Yeah, and you know, another point though on what you said, I've heard from multiple people, and I've seen it kind of reported elsewhere. A lot of people have made a like NFL personnel scouts have made a big deal about every Bearcats player was at the pro day watching those guys work out. And even, you know, Bruce Feldman did kind of a mock draft talking to, or just kind of a report talking to NFL personnel about, you know, different players. And some anonymous coach was like, Sauce didn't have to do anything at pro day because he tested so well at the combine. He was fine. He was, and the scout said though, like Sauce was at pro day. He was engaged with his teammates. He was kind of cheering everybody on. And it seems like a small thing, but hearing other people say like that doesn't always happen other places. Like the whole team is not out in full force cheering guys on, watching them at pro day after they just had practice in the morning. So I think that goes exactly to kind of what you're saying, because then the reverse happens. Those guys come back to spring practice and they're talking to the young guys. But yeah, I think this is a really interesting season for Cincinnati. You know, they just got a big addition in Corey Kiner transferring back.
Huge.
That's huge. Because I think, you know, running back is losing Jerome Ford. That was kind of one of the bigger question marks on the roster heading into this season. I've said this and I've written this. You know, I think this team still has a chance to win a third straight AAC title. And by doing that, that puts them, you know, historically in pretty good position to grab that, you know, last season group of 5 access spot to the New Year's Six Bowl. In some ways, if this group is able to do that, and I think it's within reason, I don't want to say it's as impressive as going to the college football playoff, but it's like right there, because you look at all the talent. So, you know, if you take in the amount of talent they're losing, that's going off to the NFL and what they're able to do last year, if they're able to, you know, kind of repeat and get back to a New Year's Six Bowl, you know, it's just a notch below how impressive it was to make to the playoff last year.
But Justin, if we can make a 3-year run of 2 New Year's Six Bowls and 1 Final Four appearance, that's coming from the University of Cincinnati football, that would be unfreaking believable, dude. Because like I said, I've said this multiple times. I remember going there when you could walk in. I mean, you had to have a ticket, but toward the end of the game, you could just walk in. There was no, nobody cared. I mean, nobody showed up in the stadium. That was when I was going to college there, which is 100 years ago. But still, that's what longtime Bearcat fans like me remember. And for just the fact that we went to New Year's Six Bowl and a college football playoff is unbelievable. If we could roll it around and do it for 3 years in a row, that would be amazing. Now, the question being, now this is one my son keeps bringing up to me, and he keeps asking me, and I'm like, this will be a hard get. But do you think that the Bearcats could go undefeated for a third year in a row? And if they do they that would probably be a New Year's Six Bowl, but would they be considered into college football playoffs again if they're able to do 3 years in a row?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be tough, and it's gonna be tough right away because they go to Arkansas to open the season.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting. They certainly could go into Arkansas and win that game, and then they have Indiana at home, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
And the schedule, I think, football schedule is kind of basically set up the same as just flipped. So they would go on the road to UCF, would probably be their toughest conference game. They'd likely have to, Houston seems like kind of the other team people are talking about. They'd probably have to face them again in the AAC championship game. It's not like out of the realm of possibility that they go undefeated. It's kind of just funny that this is the conversation that we're having about UCF. Like, can they go undefeated again?
Right.
And again, that's a lot of pressure and a lot of to ask to put on them. I think right now it's way too early to tell. I think right now that's asking a lot. If they did that, I would say no, that's probably still not enough, to get to the playoff, just because of how much had to break right for them this past year with schedule and other teams being 2-loss teams. But man, I don't know. What if everyone falls off again and they're looking at it like, well, Cincinnati went undefeated again, let's put them in. So after last season, like, I rule nothing out. I certainly would not be making that prediction to start the season, but just the fact that this is like the conversation that is being had about Cincinnati football, you're right. It just shows how far they've come.
And it's a legit conversation. It's not, like you said, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it's mind blowing to think of that. I told him basically the same thing. So one, I'd be shocked if they were able to go undefeated again because of all the talent that they're losing, and they're not going to sneak up on anybody. I mean, they didn't sneak up on anybody last year, but they're really not going to do it this year. And Houston, I think, is going to be a tough win whenever we play them during the regular season or in the American Athletic Football Conference Championship game. But it still amazes me that we can think of that. It's amazing that we're sitting here talking about 9 guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys. I read that kind of 9 guys that we're talking about that could be drafted in the NFL for the University of Cincinnati football team. I mean, those things just don't happen here. And that's all thanks to Luke Fickell for him staying here and building a program and building a family. Like we talked about how they want to stay here. And the more and more, it looks like Luke's going to stay here unless the Ohio State job comes open or a NFL job comes open that he wants to do. That's kind of what I've been hearing. I mean, I don't know what's your thoughts. What are you hearing? How long Luke will be here, or what do you think might get him to leave? Not that I want him to leave. I want him to stay, but just what.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Ohio State thing is always going to be out there, and like for good reason. The dude has a Blocko tattoo on his leg. He's a Buckeye for sure. But I've said this for the past few years. Like, at no point has Luke ever done or said anything that would make you think he's going to leave. And in fact, he's done the exact opposite. He's he's signed the extensions. And so, and he just signed another one a couple months ago that pays him $5 million a year and is going to keep him here through, I think, 2028. I don't even remember. They're going to the Big 12. They're building an indoor practice facility. Like, I think we have he's turned down, just about every single, whether publicly or privately, he's turned down a lot of interest and job offers. I think we are officially at the point where it's like, we shouldn't even worry or talk about him leaving until there's some actual like substance to something. And maybe that is Ohio State, or maybe it's years down the road or whatever.
I think Ryan Day should stay at Ohio State for his whole life. I don't think they should ever fire him.
It's funny. I feel like there's a lot of Ryan Day and Hubert Davis at North Carolina fans, Cincinnati fans that want Wes Miller to stay at Cincinnati. They're like, I was rooting for Hubert Davis to make it to the Final Four at North Carolina. And I think it's, kind of like, oh yeah, I hope Ryan Day and Ohio State do really well and he stays there for a long time. But yeah, I just, like, at this point, what has Luke Fickell ever done or said that would make you think he's going to leave? And
Right.
until that happens, I don't think it's something Cincinnati fans should worry about.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've kind of said to a couple of Kentucky fans are always bugging me going, oh, well, this job's open and that job's open. I said, he's turned them all down. I said, I'm not saying he'll never leave. I'm not saying that. I'm a Bearcat fan. I know they all eventually leave. I'm hoping he doesn't, but we're going on what, year 5, year 6? I've lost track.
This is year 6. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're on 2 hands now of numbers. I mean, we're used to guys only being here 3 years and leaving. Now, you did mention Wes Miller, and I know I said I'd talk about some football talk here, but I'm kind of curious myself. I know they got a couple good recruits coming in this year or I think it's coming in. They got him committed anyway. Yeah. Where is Wes on the recruiting trail, and who are the commits he's got coming in this year or next year? Where they're at?
Yeah, so the 2022 kids who should be here this summer, that's Daniel Skillings, who's a 4-star out of Philly, Josh Reed, who's a 3-star out of Georgia, and then Sage Tolentino, big kid from Hawaii who transferred into Hamilton. All those guys, they're coming, and then they're working some transfer portal. They already got a couple guys on the transfer circuit, and then I think they're trying to land one more. And then the big name right now for 2023 locally is Rayvon Griffith, the kid from Taft who just led the team to a state title. He set a commitment date for May 1st, which is Sunday, and so there's a lot of interest there about him, kind of being that hometown hero, and that would be a big deal. And then, West still has some other big fish in 2023. Isaiah Collier, who's like a 5-star stud point guard in that class. They're all over him, and he's been on him for a while. So Wes Miller is not afraid to take big swings, and he's certainly, doing that this summer, and I think wants to continue to do that. And he understands, it's a little bit different situation. Football going to the Big 12 is hitting like at the perfect exact right time for that football program. Like they're just set up and built for this. Basketball, like it's not as the timeline is not quite as helpful or conducive, but they're using the move to their advantage. Wes Miller and that staff, they're preaching that on the recruiting trail. Like, we're building back up, but we're also going to the Big 12, the best conference in college basketball.
Yes.
And so they might not be quite at the level football's at right now, but they're able to use kind of that move to help them and help them build moving forward. And I think they're going in a really positive direction.
Exactly. That's the one bad thing about it is football. We're set up perfectly. Basketball, right now we're going to get our butts kicked. I'll tell you that right now. Now, speaking of the Big 12, I still haven't heard anything official. I mean, everybody thinks it's going to be 2023, but I think UC has got to buy their way out or something like that. Is there any? Have you got any more information on concrete when we might be actually making the move?
Nothing concrete. The party line for Cincinnati is no later than July 1st, 2024, unless they can get out sooner. I'll be shocked if they don't get out sooner. It's even more like the Fickell thing. Until I hear otherwise, I'm going to assume Cincinnati's going to be there in 2023 just because they want to be. It makes the most sense.
Right.
I don't know the specifics of how that's going to happen or how much that's going to cost. No one does right now. But I think this will be the last year. Football, basketball will be playing in the AAC. And I think we might actually find out specifics on that pretty soon, sometime this spring, summer.
Oh, great. That would be awesome because I know me and other Bearcat fans are dying to find out when we're moving because we're tired of being in the American. We want to go to the Big 12, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun football-wise, and it's going to be interesting basketball-wise. That is for sure. All right,
Justin, humbling maybe, but it'll be good.
Yes. Basketball is football. Football's going to be interesting. I'll just put it this way. Football's going to be really interesting, depending on how I think football's for me. So depending on how this next season goes, how we handle losing all these guys and recover from it as to how it's going to be moving forward. Because a lot of guys are losing. We've never lost this much talent before, ever. and we have to replace it. So that's going to be a lot of it for me. And then Big 12 is no joke in football. I mean, I know Texas and Oklahoma are going to be there, but there's still some pretty daggone good football teams there. And like I said, it's going to be the best basketball, I think, conference around. I mean, you give me your Big 10s, you get ACC. I mean, Big 12 will stack up with any of them. So it's definitely going to be a big jump. I can't wait for it. Justin, you give me 24 minutes. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Tell everybody about any articles or anything you got coming up and anything you want to plug before I let you go.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Williams_Justin. Subscribe to The Athletic. I mean, we've been I think having mock drafts every 6 seconds on The Athletic, and there'll be plenty of draft coverage with all the Bearcat stuff. So definitely subscribe for that. And then definitely some basketball, with the transfer portal and roster getting finalized, plenty to cover there.
Lots of stuff to keep you busy. All right, Justin, as always, I appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Thanks, brother.